Hello and welcome to Little Home in the Universe. I am Stephen Reese. Today we are going to be making flaky pastry crust. Yeah, you have to shake your shoulders when you make it. We are going to go over 3 different techniques of how to create this crust. One's with our hand, the other 2 are with the Cuisinart. One is a little bit more chunky, one's a little bit finer. We're going to get into it, don't worry. There are also 3 different fats that you can use. There's lard, which in my opinion will give you the most flaky of flaky crusts. There's butter, and then there's vegetable shortening, which you see that I don't have. I don't really care for it very much. I don't think that the flavor is really there. Lard I typically do with meat pies or ham pies or something that already has meat in it. Butter I typically do with my quiches and something that I want that kind of sweetness from the cream. A very important thing to note about all of your baking items is to please use a quality flour. I'm not saying you have to go to the mill and you have to get it fresh ground, but if you do that, that's great. But just please purchase one step above the generic brand. The generic brand probably has been sitting in a warehouse for 3 to 4 years. The wheat itself is a poor quality wheat, whereas this brand, they care a little bit more. And that's all that we're looking for. We're not looking for rock star flour. We're looking for people who care just a little bit more about the quality of their flour. It's going to make everything taste so much better. And when you cost it all out, you know, 1 pie dough is going to make me a quiche that can serve a family of 4. So a cup of flour, when you really cost it out, you're adding maybe a couple cents per item, per recipe for things. Yeah. All right, let's make some pie dough. I also forgot to mention we are going to be using a scale because we are going to weigh things. This pie dough recipe that we are creating is going to be another one of those things that is created in parts so that you can scale it up and scale it down. It's a 3-2-1 pie dough. For all of those of you who are bakers professionally, you will know about it. So basically we're using a ratio of parts, so 3 parts flour, 2 parts fat, and 1 part technically water. It is really humid here, about 72-75% humidity in my kitchen at around 75 degrees heat, so I'm probably not going to add any water. Why? Because this flour has already absorbed so much water that I don't need to add water. If it was the winter time and there was no humidity and it was bone dry, you know, and your skin's all like, ugh, put some lotion, then we're going to add some water. But because it's the middle of the summer, and again, things are real humid, probably not going to add any water. Also, I tend to not add water with my butter pie dough, or I add a very small amount because there's already a fair amount of free-moving water in the butter, whereas the lard has a ton of fat in it, and that's pretty much all that it is. That's why you get a flakier crust. Lard. So we have our first method, which is the hand mixing method. Everything has been weighed out, so I have 12 ounces of flour, 8 ounces of butter. I'm not really going to use water. I will kind of spritz it, as you see. So once I get my butter situated, okay, there we go. I'm going to add half the flour to it to start working it and just mash it up with my hands. That's pretty much it. Just keep mashing it until it's about the size of croutons. Add the rest of your flour, and now we're going to really start to squish it. So I like to rub it in between my hands and kind of break the butter chunks apart with my fingertips. And then I just keep manhandling it until I work the size of that butter down. I really love that heel kind of action. That's a fun one if you don't have a lot of strength in your hands and you get a lot of carpal tunnel. You can take the back of your palm and smear the butter and the flour together. Don't forget to add your salt, about a teaspoon of salt. We don't want it to be super salty, but we don't want it to be bland. And Now I'm just smushing it in between my hands and kind of giving it a little rub. This is that heel of my palm action. Just working that butter in there. All right, so now that it can hold its form, I know that we're well worked. So now I'm just going to spritz it with a little bit of water. Literally just a little bit of water off my fingers. Compress it, check it, and we're done. Here we have the food processor method. Add your flour first so that your butter does not stick to the sides. Very important. Now add your butter chunks. In hindsight, I should have done bigger chunks of butter, a teaspoon of salt, just so that I like to have kind of almost like a rough puff or big chunks of butter in my flour. So I'm going to pulse it just to kind of get everything mixed. And then you see that I'm sprinkling water in here. Again, in hindsight, I should have added just a full 1 ounce to 2 ounces of water and then started my blending. So because I didn't add enough water at the first go, I then had to add more water to get it here, which then made my butter chunks smaller. It didn't ruin anything. You'll see at the end, I still have some butter chunks that you can see. Again, so now we're just compressing it to make sure that it all comes together. Knock that out. Add a little bit more water just because I'm not very happy with the crumble of it. And yep, and then I'm going to squish it together, and we're going to put this in the fridge for about half an hour to 45 minutes. Wrap it up, and you can see kind of that I still have some little visible chunks of butter. That's really what we're looking for. I wish that I had had a couple more, but man, this is like whatever. And so now on to the lard method, food processor. Flour into the food processor first, and then I'm gonna chunk up my lard. It is very soft, yeah. And then I'm going to correct my mistake that I did with the butter food processor method, and I'm going to add water to start. About 1 ounce of water to start, then I'll blend it, and then add the other ounce of water. You'll see this dough in particular is a much softer dough. We really want to make sure with all the doughs that we're not overworking them and over manipulating them. And also we want to make sure that all of the doughs are getting at least a minimum of a half an hour to 45 minutes in the refrigerator to kind of settle and all the moisture can relax and kind of relax into the dough. And now we have the fun part. It is rolling out the dough. Woo! Yay! What good times. So to the right is the hand mashed method. That one, it's rock hard. The butter food processor is medium soft, and the lard is still quite pliable. Probably because I didn't put it in the refrigerator for long enough. So we're going to work with a floured surface always. We always want to also have our rolling pin floured. If you get something stuck to your rolling pin, you want to make sure that you get that off. Just showing you again how firm the doughs are and how really quite different they are from one another. See how it's a very fine grain there with the lard versus the other two butters. And so we just gently smush it into some flour and then give it a little roll. We're really not looking to apply a lot of pressure here. You're looking for the rolling pin to do the heavy lifting and the work. We're looking for about 1/4 of an inch. Is that 1/4 of an inch? I don't know. We're looking for a good thickness. You don't want a wimpy, super thin crust. Nobody likes a wimpy crust. Again, this is the food processor butter method. You'll see it'll break apart a little bit more because it is still a firmer dough. If we had let it warm up to room temperature, that would help. If it breaks apart, don't stress. Just pinch it back together. Look, see, I'm just squishing and pinching, and it holds its shape and it looks perfect. if you put it into the, your quiche pan and it makes a little tear and a break, just pinch it back together. It's gonna be totally fine. We're gonna blind bake all of these anyways, so if a hole does form, we can address that with some egg white or with a little bit more dough at the time that it's happened. And so now this is the hand mashed. While I was just rambling, what I was doing with my hands was warming the dough up because I'm impatient and I want to use it right now. In all reality, I should have let this come to room temperature. You'll see this one breaks apart much, much more than the other two. So it just needs a little bit of squishing back together and compressing. Again, when you put it into a tin or your vessel, it will probably break. Don't worry, just squish that together. If it has a big hole, then roll out a little bit more dough and slap it on top. And so we have the lard with 1 dot, the hand processed with 2, food processor with 2, and hand processed with 3. So our pie crusts are out of the oven. They have been baked to a nice kind of almondy brown. We really want to make sure that when we're baking things at least to this color point or a little further. Anything lighter than that, kind of a neutral beige, it's just going to taste like wheat. We haven't cooked it for long enough. We haven't pulled enough moisture out. It's going to absorb more moisture. It's going to taste tacky almost, Yeah. Anywho, so the pork one is almost so flaky it's hard to pick up. Legit. Look at this crumble. I just look at it and it falls apart. Fantastic stuff. The butter one that we processed pretty well has a nice crisp to it. Oh, do you hear that snap? Beautiful snap. A little bit of a firmer texture. The one that we hand worked, however, oh goodness, it just falls apart like the pork one, right? Really beautiful texture, very like crumb, very, very, very flaky. I would use the hand method only for things that are going into a dish, for instance, a quiche or a tart or something of that nature. For hand pies or free-formed pies, I would use either the butter in the food processor or the lard in the food processor. That's about it. So go make a pie. Send it to me. Let me know how it worked for you. Add some comments. As always, please like and subscribe this video. Go on to our website. We'll post that somewhere. Find something lovely to purchase because YouTube doesn't pay the bills. And I think that's it. I think that's all that I have to say. Okay. See you. Have a great night, day, afternoon. Bye.